Fortuna Bush. I lead Booz Allen's Indo-Pacific business, and I'm so excited to be here at Firestorm's global headquarters after their phenomenal ribbon-cutting ceremony this morning. Today, we're here in this beautiful 65,000 square foot facility to talk about the future of drone warfare and expeditionary manufacturing.
We're really trying to bring the best technologies at a low cost to the warfighter.
XL was created out of a need to create affordable mass at the edge.
It's clear the conversation is around how do we help increase speed to capability and get the capability out faster to the warfighter.
We wanted to figure out a way to kind of break the paradigm, mass produce drones, make them really interoperable with different payloads.
We're seeing a transition from exquisite to affordable.
How can we bring advanced manufacturing for the first time to the point of need for the Department of Defense?
It's really exciting to think about what the future of this partnership looks like with that in mind.
What we're doing here is resonating with a lot of people, both in Washington, D.C. and around the world. Thank you so much for coming today.
I'm Heather Fortuna Bush. I lead Booz Allen's Indo-Pacific business, and I'm so excited to be here at Firestorm's global headquarters after their phenomenal ribbon-cutting ceremony this morning. So today we're here in this beautiful 65,000 square foot facility to talk about the future of drone warfare and expeditionary manufacturing. So let's go around the panel and have you introduce yourselves.
I'm Dan Magy. I'm co-founder and CEO of Firestorm. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. In my 20s, I learned you could ask people for money to start businesses. And since that time, I've started now 2 defense companies, first in counter UAS and now in drones and advanced manufacturing.
I'm Chad McCoy, co-founder and CSO of Firestorm. Recently retired Air Force E9, spent most of my life in the special operations community, using a lot of the tools that we're building, and hopefully an oriented understanding of what's necessary for the next fight.
Hi, I'm Jennie Brooks with Booz Allen. I lead our work for the Navy Marine Corps across the company, and I'm excited to talk with our partners from Firestorm today.
For somebody who's not familiar with Firestorm and just hearing about you for the first time, what's the key takeaway from Firestorm?
I think we each say this maybe a little differently. I say we started as a drone company because we wanted to build lots of affordable drones, and now we're kind of becoming a manufacturing company that has a drone problem, right? I think the aperture of what this business will do over the next 36 months is just widening by the day. And so we're really excited to kind of work with big companies, small companies, and listen to end users to say, hey, how can we bring advanced manufacturing for the first time to the point of need for the Department of Defense?
The market is revealing itself to us as a business. And so Dan's absolutely correct. We're going to where the greatest need is and where we can be the most differentiated. Our platforms are differentiated themselves. They're beautiful. They're modular. Like we talked about, many missions out of one aircraft. But the logistics component of this is so needed. It is every conference you go to, every leader you talk to, they talk about the contested logistics kind of conundrum, and they're looking to industry and saying, solve our problems. And we haven't solved all of it. We've solved a piece of it, but we've solved a really important piece. And so as our inventory or quiver or output of XL continues to grow, we have something very special and we know it. Now we need to create the narrative and the messaging to make sure that DoD or DoW understands that effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I think about what you've just said in the context of the Indo-Pacific, which Jennie with, Navy and Marine Corps covers so much water. I mean, that space covers half of the Earth's surface, over half of the world's population. It's home to 7 of the largest militaries. When we talk about logistics and the problem of logistics in the context of this fight, we have to do so by also thinking about how the systems are interoperable, right? Interoperable with the other tech within the Department of War, interoperable within, the framework of our partners and allies. How are you both thinking about interoperability?
You are framing one of the biggest things that is said to us when we have conversations across Indo-PACOM. Every country that we're allied with buys different kit, right?
Yes.
And so I've talked to Marine UAV pilots who are now trained on like 15 different platforms. That's a huge problem, because if you're going to go to different places, you don't have 2 weeks to get trained on something, right? So how we think of interoperability is, first, you have to be able to change a payload like in minutes, in real time. And there's a lot of magic that we've done to make that happen behind the scenes, which is, solve some of the electrical engineering problems, like how do you put a new radio or new camera on a drone? How do you solve some of the middleware and software problems to allow for that type of interoperability? But I think I'd take it a step further and say you have to decrease the cognitive load of the operator. And that's what we're doing both with our autonomy stack and then some of the folks we're working with. Because again, if you have a Marine who's in the Philippines and he has to go to Japan, and I'm making this up, like, you could have very different systems that you're going to be operating on. And so you have to solve those problems. One of the things we want to do with that technology is open source it to the rest of the community and say, hey, here's your universal flight controller. It allows you to put a lot of payloads on it. It has compute, so you can put any type of AI you want on it as well. And I'm hoping we'll get there pretty soon to like achieve, that kind of software layer across a lot of different unmanned platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your perspective on this?
So I did 23 years in the military, and I had 3 versions of personal radios, right? From, when I was in 1998 till, when I got out of the military in 21. And so that cat and mouse game that exists today doesn't allow that, antiquated model of, hey, you have this radio for the next 10 years before you cycle another, 100 radios in. And so if you have a platform that can adapt to the cat and mouse game of countermeasures, which is something we've never seen before, right? To be able to jam a certain frequency, or even when we're talking EMI or even directed energy, like, this is creating a problem set that we've never faced. And so if you have a product that is, its design is locked, potentially the entire product becomes obsolete. And so we want to basically have that constant kind of evolution. It comes at a price though, right? And it's very difficult. This is where our software team is really leading the charge, is that it's not easy to do this. It's not cheap, but our intent is to empower the end user and give it to them and say, if you have a better sensor, then you get to choose your adventure. And so I think that's what's really special about what we're building. Aside from like the logistics portion, the platform itself and the adaptability of plug and play systems will keep it relevant potentially for a lot longer than other platforms.
As I was walking around, I saw a sign that talked about democratizing the fight. So why democratize the fight?
I think we'll each answer this question in a different way. But for me, it comes down to giving the United States and its allies around the world the technologies they need to hedge against some of the more aggressive neighbors we might see, right? I think you could say authoritarianism is on the rise around the world. And if you look at the production numbers coming out of places like Russia, China, Iran, we're talking millions of drones a year, while a lot of countries are either at like 0 or in the low tens of thousands. So we wanted to figure out a way to kind of break the paradigm, mass produce drones, make them really interoperable with different payloads, which is a huge deal in Ukraine. And then, give the means of protection to the United States, like to some of our allies.
It's a pretty good answer. That's why he's the CEO. But we're seeing a transition from exquisite to affordable. And that's the easiest way to put it, is that in the 90s, even to early 2000s, there was a heavy reliance on exquisite systems becoming the really the differentiator with military capability and also geopolitics. And now we're seeing its mass. And so with that pivot, democratizing the fight means finding simple systems that work and they're affordable and scalable. And so that is the essence of our business.
I think our warfighters don't have time to wait any longer for the traditional acquisition life cycles. It's clear the conversation is around how do we help increase speed to capability and get the capability out faster to the warfighter. When you look at just across the Department of Navy and more broadly the Department of War, you see partnerships becoming an increasing part of that solution. We cannot go it alone. We don't have time to go it alone. Look at the AUKUS partnership, where you have Australia, the UK, and the United States coming together in a trilateral security partnership, and that's all about technology sharing. And so I think it is a matter of speed to capability. And one of the things I love about Firestorm's capability is it really is about scale. really increased output at a lower cost. And that's all about accelerating readiness and preparing our sailors and Marines. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And as I think about democratizing the fight, I think about how it flips the cost continuum. Because if you're now looking at whether at a drone that costs even a couple hundred or a couple $1,000, blinding or taking out $100 million radar, that's a trade worth making. So I think that's also another important point here in the current environment. We've talked about drones. That's a key capability that you bring as well. What is the future of drone warfare?
Many and cheap, right? I mean, we don't need to beat a dead horse on what Ukraine taught us, but these are guerrilla tactics, and they're basically drawn out of necessity. And so the irony is the U.S. as a superpower is going to be in the same position because we're not going to have air superiority or sovereignty in the air. And so you're going to need systems that are not reliant on a massive C2 node. Our targeting has to be self-sufficient from the guys on the ground, and being able to carry out strike isn't necessarily predicated on having manned assets above that can go take those things out. And you mentioned, high-end radars or IAD systems. Traditionally, we have to work our way in there to penetrate those targets. And now there is the ability for small teams, and it's not SOF exclusive, to be able to do that and carry that out with low-cost modular multi-mission systems. And so the scale is, the continuum is, from cheap quadcopters to, what we have behind us, which is a, heavy Group 2 that can do all those missions. And then even we're seeing Group 3s now affordable. And so it's going to change tactics. It already is changing tactics. And you're seeing the Army with this deliberate pivot with transformation and contact, how they're empowering the VCTs. Like, we've already seen it. And so that's where I think it's changing. I think it's a necessity. And we're providing some of those solutions, not the entire quiver.
I would just add the demand signals are clear from the Department of Navy as well, right? So they've sent clear signs that autonomy is going to be a demand. You have the Secretary of the Navy is starting up an organization that's focused on robotics and autonomous systems. You have the Navy CTO that recently published their list of the technology that's important, and autonomy is clearly a part of that. And I think what I'm excited about with this partnership is we're here at your global headquarters out of San Diego, California. This is our hometown, and it's a place where Booz Allen has also had a large presence supporting our sailors and Marines for many years. And San Diego, our community itself, has a long history of working with the military and also bringing in commercial tech and innovation to support our military. So I wanted to sort of ask you a little bit about that. You mentioned modularity. How are you thinking about the broader ecosystem and work you can do with other partners across the industrial base, whether they're traditional performers, OEMs, or new starts and non-traditionals like yourselves?
So we're a partner-first company, first and foremost, right? The products we make have to have like a baseline capability every single time. And that's what will drive down kind of the cost to buy these things. But, if someone has a better radio or someone has a better computer vision system, we want to be working with them. And we don't care if it's a 3-person shop, in Holland, where actually a lot of good stuff comes out of for the war in Ukraine, or if it's Booz Allen or Raytheon or Lockheed Martin, right? Again, we need to let the end user have a number of options so that they can kind of put together the systems in a way that lets them most effectively carry out a mission. As to getting back to this idea of democratization, chips are plentiful, chips are powerful, and there's now whole open source communities building some of these parts of technology. Our vision here, both for our platform that flies and then our platform that manufactures, is we want to be working with a lot of other people to have the best in-class stuff either being built in our XLs or put on our airplanes.
Cool. Yeah, those partnerships are going to be really critical because, again, as I think about the future, we're going to get, especially in the Indo-Pacific region, I think of autonomy at the edge. And what we learned from Ukraine about moving away from remote-controlled drones to smart autonomy under human oversight. I think about drones drone versus counter drone swarms, and how we're going to see EW duels, things of that nature, I think have really changed how warfare is going to look both into the present and into the future. And I think there's also a play here for expeditionary manufacturing. Dan, how do you see that playing in today's environment?
Yeah, so what we've found is we've, taken our big industrial HP 3D printers and put them into 20-foot shipping containers that can be set up and start running kind of in less than a day anywhere in the world, is that when you give this technology kind of for the first time to the warfighter at the edge, they will start telling you all the other things, other problems you can help them solve, right? So for a lot of folks, 3D printing is, a small little cube that sits on a desk in a science classroom, right? Or if you got like a really, forward-leaning parent, maybe you have one in your house, right? But the reality is that it's so much more than that. That's kind of what 3D printing was 10 years ago. The HP 3D printers that we can kind of exclusively move around in a mobile configuration are like the Ferrari of 3D printers. And what I mean by that is you need dozens of smaller printers to get the same output of one of our machines. And so because folks have never had that capability at the edge, and it's really, really easy to use, right? There's no post-processing. It's literally powder that you blow the powder off of, and now you have a usable part. It's dramatically expanded the aperture of what we are doing as a business. We're fixing other people's stuff. We're prototyping stuff. We're now being asked to help supply chain issues that are huge and real bottlenecks in contested logistics environments, right? I mean, if you can't get a piece of plastic that like will help move a howitzer around, you can't use the howitzer. Same thing for a bunch of land vehicles. It's fascinating. And so again, giving the tools to the end user and listening to the end user is really opening the aperture of what advanced manufacturing at the edge can do.
Yeah, which is so critical to today's, capability. And you brought up something, you talked about, you used an analogy around a Ferrari. And talk to me more about what it means to have that Ferrari capability versus a Toyota capability in today's environment, and why that's so important to talk about, less expensive manufacturing, less expensive drones.
Yeah. So two different kind of ideas here, right? The first is that you need to mass produce drones and basically make them very modular. So you can put whatever payload you want into it. That's what we have not done well. A lot of the primes in this space, the drones they sell cost more than a Ferrari. And we think that's not a great thing. They might be very performant, but if you're using it one time, like kind of, why do you care? Ukraine's shown this lesson again and again and again and again. It's about mass. And that's something Chad was talking about earlier. The second thing though, is like from a ease of use and a reliability standpoint, that's really what our manufacturing approach brings to the edge. And that's what a lot of people, when they see it, they're blown away by, right? Like, how can something this big that has such big output be so easy to use? Well, we've tried to continue to design and iterate to make it easier for the warfighter or the allied partner, if you will, to be able to use this system and make a variety of products that will kind of, change the course of the battlefield.
Yeah, and you mentioned allied partners. And Chad, I know you were recently in Thailand. You've been on the road visiting many of our partners and allies in the theater of Indo-Pacific. What are you seeing there with our allies and partners that will help them partner with us in the United States on these critical capabilities and warfare objectives?
I think there's two ways to look at it. One is, joint partnerships, and what does that mean? But the first one I'd start on is self-sufficiency, and how do we create that with our partners so that they're not vulnerable to, the political cycle in the U.S. is like, are we going to have good relationships in 4 years? And that uncertainty is anxiety producing for these countries that are concerned about their prosperity, especially within Indo-PACOM, right? Because it's so volatile right now. And so that's the first and foremost, is that we use this term, manufacturing and production sovereignty. It's because we don't need to be the ones that do it for them. We can empower them with the tools to do it very quickly. And the same thesis applies into DoD. And then when you ask about joint partnerships and what those relationships look like, there is a world we live in where the defense production is symbiotic with what our maneuver is as a country as we go into theaters, and we can inherit capability that we are staging, potentially, years in advance. And the systems that we're building aren't necessarily just weapons of war. They serve functions in times of peace with humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, all the things. And so, to Dan's point about the creativity that the ability to 3D print and unlock systems is going to create, it's going to show us markets that we didn't even know about when we started this business. And so that's where I think the intersection between the joint capability exists with partners. But really, I think when it comes down to not only in Indo-PACOM, but also across the world, is that we want to enable them and empower them. And you have to tie it to output. If it was simply a 3D printer, you're missing the creative kind of flow of what it does. And we have the designs, right? And those designs will continue to grow. It will become a card catalog list of capability that eventually, partnerships within the US, and you talked about partnerships previously, is that we would love to build their drones as well. And so it doesn't have to be Tempest all the time. It might be one of our competitors. And so that allows us to play nice with others. And there's plenty of space within the drone market for all of us to kind of exist. And we want to be complementary.
I don't want to lose sight of the parts, spare parts, obsolescent parts, and how critical they are to readiness. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about the parts? And going back to for the Ferrari versus Toyota example, how do you think about risks in terms of, what might be needed out in the field?
You mentioned Navy. I think Navy is the most intuitive one, right? It's a DDG floating in the middle of the Pacific. Something breaks. Now, I know that there's the cliche use case of it costs $1 million to get a part out to the middle of the ocean, but it routinely happens. And when we're talking about an aircraft carrier or even a flat top LHD that is going to be out there with a potential MEU on it, there is a relationship between the expeditionary force of the Marine Corps and how they're going to island hop, and also the steady state logistics burden of being afloat. And so we think that we can capture a lot of that and support it. But to your point, it's much more than that. It's parts and pieces. And sometimes those parts and pieces are just enough just-in-time production to get something off of the X, get it back up in the air, or get it back up in the fight. And if we can produce this, we have solved one of the hardest problems of contested logistics to date.
I think looking at and using some really interesting software to start looking at like part obsolescence and cycle management can be really crucial too. Yeah. So you could go out, we could be printing dozens of these parts and use them to either keep the systems running until, a different part shows up, or they break so much we don't really kind of care, right? Is one part of it. But being able to flex into a part that's like at a point of need, and have something that can be used in a day or two, that is truly an unlocking capability. Again, we're shocked when we go to all these readiness training centers and exercises where something breaks on day one of a 14-day cycle, and you are SOL, right? Thing goes in a box, can't use it again. And so getting that thing out of the box and back into the field to get the readiness and training reps in is equally as important as forward deploying these things.
With this, modular or adaptability that we're baking into this design, this is what's exciting about partnership with Booz Allen, is that the operationalization of capability within the platform, new EW systems, new swarm hive mind systems that we can integrate. There's a myriad of things that we can adapt to, and having partners now with potentially a deeper bench on capability is really essential. And so the bigger companies are going to be really important in the next fight for that component as well.
Yeah, and we're excited just, I think, with our track record and AI to look at what do the drones look like with AI software on there that we could bring, right? To have a bigger play around autonomy, which is going to increase the value proposition at the edge. It's going to, make the warfighter safer. It's going to potentially prevent casualties. It's going to accelerate deterrence. So that's something I'm excited about as well.
I'd love to live in a world where we can take a lot of the Booz Allen kind of technology suite, whether it's AI or sensor payloads, fuse that with our, soon to come AI manufacturing design software. We might be looking at vehicles that look very different from what's behind us it could be a whole new class of unmanned aerial vehicles.
Yeah, it's really exciting to think about what the future of this partnership looks like with that in mind. Jennie, what other things are you seeing from a Navy Marine Corps perspective that provide value to this partnership as we think about the future of warfare?
Well, I think I would just add on the heels of that, if you walk this facility with any of our colleagues, our employees, some 30% of whom on any given day are veterans themselves or military affiliated. Just walk it with them and see what their reaction is. And they're going to tell you exactly where they see the use cases and the needs. And they're deeply invested in driving speed to capability for the warfighter. I think that it's all about readiness, right? So accelerated readiness, the obsolescent parts going to be critical. And obviously the investment in autonomy and staying agile and going faster, taking the calculated risk, which is another foundational part of why I'm excited by the partnership, is taking that eye to keep going, take the calculated risk, invest in the capability for the warfighter. Accelerated readiness isn't just about the speed to capability. It is that speed at scale, and the cost efficiencies here are critical, right? Going back to the Ferrari-Toyota conversation. What I'm so excited about is the output at the lower cost. It becomes just a win-win across the board to drive readiness for our sailors and Marines.
Thanks so much for today's insightful conversation. I think the capabilities that you bring today at Firestorm in partnership with us are really going to reshape the defense industrial base and the future of additive manufacturing.